Hello guys, my name is Nash. Welcome to Thursday Tales of Terror, TTT. For today's case, I actually came across this story on a forum and it's one of China's most notorious and bizarre cases. I have previously covered a case from China, the Diao Aiqing case if you guys can remember. She was the girl that was last seen wearing a red coat and her body was being chopped into more than 2,000 pieces. Now, I'm pretty sure it is a coincidence, but today's story, the victim was just a 13-year-old boy and this case was dubbed as the boy in red because he was found dead hanging from a wooden beam with both hands and legs tied firmly. And the weird part was he was wearing a red dress over a woman's black swimsuit. It's just crazy to me how both victims were last seen wearing red, and this boy in red case is extremely frustrating because within only a month the police closed the case. I actually saw several photos online of the crime scene, and there's more information and uncensored photos if you type Kuang Zhijun in Chinese. That's the 13-year-old boy's name. This case is very well known in China, and the information you can find, especially detailed ones, are in Chinese. Even if you can find the English write-up on this case, it's not very clear due to how the sentences are being structured. So I hope with this video, you can understand the story better. So let's begin the story. The victim was 13-year-old Kuang Zhijun. He was the only son in the family. His friends and family describe him as quiet, obedient, and sensible. He often liked to be alone and he was never seen playing with other kids. One of his favorite pastimes was reading. Specifically, he likes to read this novel titled Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio written by Pu Songling, comprising close to 500 Marvel tales which serve to implicitly criticize societal problems then. Before the tragedy, the boy's father Kuang Zhijun worked together with his wife Gu Denghui in the North District of Chongqing in the nearby mega city. The parents lived near their work area while the boy was studying at a local boarding school in a small town in the South District. The family would usually meet every weekend. The boy would always travel down to where his parents lived during the weekend to spend time together and get his pocket money. This is not uncommon in China, and as such, kids in China usually become independent really quickly. Sometimes the children don't even get to see their parents for months because they're working hard somewhere far without a choice just so that they can make money for their children. The family also had an old farmhouse in Shuangxing, a remote village in the Banan district of Chongqing. This old house was not far from the boy's school. Because the parents had their own place near their work and the boy would spend his Saturday at his parents' place and the rest of the days in school, the house was abandoned for a long time as no one lived there. The old farmhouse had 3 doors, a main door, a side door, and a back door. The back door was not very obvious because it's being blocked by 2 wooden planks and 1 rebar, and because of this, the back door is not very noticeable to strangers. On 25th October 2009, Kuang Zhijun told his parents that he wouldn't be coming to find them next week. Instead, he wants to hang out by himself at the old farmhouse. The parents didn't think it was an issue and they agreed. On 30th October 2009, on a Friday, Kuang Zhijun left school and went to the old farmhouse. However, he didn't report to school as usual on the 1st of November 2009. On that day itself, the school tried contacting Kuang Zhijun's parents but were unable to get through. Kuang Zhijun's father said that his phone wasn't working and so he couldn't receive any calls. Coincidentally, there was a flu outbreak and more than 30 students didn't turn up for school. Hence, the teachers thought that Kuang Zhijun might have gotten the flu too and that's why he didn't turn up. So they didn't make a big deal out of it when he didn't turn up for many days. Now, because the boy's father's phone was not working, on November 5th, 2009, he decided to drop by to pass the boy some allowance. He went to their old farmhouse in Shuangxing and he realized that the front door was locked. He went to the side door and it was also locked. If Kuang Zhijun was home, he would usually leave either the front or the side door open. The father had a bad feeling about this. He went to the back door of the house and he noticed that the 2 wooden planks and rebar were removed and placed to the side. When Kuang Zhijun's father entered the house, he was so shocked to find the boy, his son, hanging from a wooden beam with his hands and feet tied firmly. What he had witnessed was something out of the ordinary. It was truly shocking and extremely spooky. He couldn't believe his own own eyes, both hands and feet were skillfully and professionally tied. Now, if you're curious on how exactly the boy was being tied, a Chinese YouTuber tried it out to see if it's possible to tie in that manner by yourself, and yes, it's proven to be possible. I will leave his link down in the description box below and the timing on when he demonstrated the rope tying process, if you're curious. So it's basically the rope tied around his ankles, and then it goes over around the thighs and up to the ribs area and to the wrist. There was quite a distance between his feet and the ground, and between his feet dangled a weight. He also had a tiny pinhole on his forehead, and not only that, the boy was wearing a red dress, which the father found familiar. He later realized that the red dress belonged to his niece, and underneath the red dress was a woman's swimsuit that was black in color. 2 pieces of black cloth had also been used as breast padding. Now, when I saw the pictures, the swimsuit appeared to be skin tight fitting, so I don't really believe that he was made to put on the swimsuit and that he had put it on his own. It would require a lot of effort even on his part to wear it. That's what I believe. Now, the house itself was messy, a bench was overturned, and on the ground there's a small pit with traces of urine in it. Clothes were scattered, but nothing was reported missing. His school bag was intact, and inside the bag was some money, 32.50 yuan, watch, cell phone, everything was there. Robbery was then ruled out as a motive. Kuang Zhijun's father was extremely heartbroken and wanted to untie his son and bring him down. When he touched the boy's body, it was already cold. Kuang Zhijun should have already passed on for quite some time. Reports stated that he was dead for about 48 hours before he was found. Kuang Zhijun's father had the boy when he was 41 years old, and it wasn't easy. And now, his son is gone. Just like that. He really couldn't accept what's happening. Kuang Zhijun's father immediately called his wife to return back to the old farmhouse, and at the same time, he reported this matter to the police. Not long after, the police arrived at the crime scene and conducted a careful investigation. Other than deep strangulation marks on the thighs, hands, ribs, and the top of both ankles, there were no other visible signs of traumas. There were also no other footprints or any indications of a struggle. However, at the front part of the swimsuit, there were traces of candle wax droppings. The wooden beam in which Kuang Zhijun was found hanging from had rope friction marks, which goes to show that this was not the first time the boy had tried to do something similar. On the bed itself, there was a half-burnt candle, cigarette lighter, iron chain, and VCD. The content of the VCDs are episodes of the anime series Saint Seiya. Many netizens pointed out that Saint Seiya's costume is very similar to the one Kuang Zhijun was wearing when he died. And not only that, the characters in that series uses a lot of chains and ropes, so it kind of makes sense that the boy, after being exposed to this, also decided to try it out by experimenting around with the ropes. When interviewed by the media, Kuang Zhijun's classmates said that he was a very quiet but honest boy. There was nothing amiss on that day when Kuang Zhijun left school to go home. The neighbors further add on that even though the boy had poor academic performance, he was never a bad boy. He was well behaved and he's not the type to offend or provoke anyone. The media further asked the teachers, classmates and neighbors if they noticed anything unusual with Kuang Zhijun, if he had any unusual hobbies or if he wasn't normal. They said that he was just like any other kid and that they have never seen him wearing any female clothing before. The father, however, did mention that he had seen his son wearing his cousin's clothes before. After the investigation was over, on 3rd December 2009, the police concluded that the boy died from an accidental death as they were unable to find any evidence or traces that someone could have murdered the boy. When Kuang Zhijun's father asked the police what's the meaning of accidental death, they told him that the boy could have died from playing games, and he was not happy to hear this. What kind of a game is this that would involve my son wearing a swimsuit and dress and tying himself up? Now, Kuang Zhijun's father was obviously not happy with the conclusion given by the police. He then applied to the Chongqing Municipal Public Security Bureau for reconsideration and at the same time sued the school for failing to fulfill its supervisory responsibilities. responsibilities. He said he trusted the school to take care of the boy, but this was what happened. The school principal, on the other hand, said that they had tried to call the boy's parents but were unable to reach them. And because of the flu outbreak, more than 30 students didn't attend school that week. They don't have the manpower to physically go to each of their houses to check. However, the principal said that the school would take all responsibility if a court ruled it was the school's fault. On December 10, 2009, Kuang Zhijun's father submitted an application for reconsideration to the Banan District Police but was rejected. The police refused to reopen this case. Now I want to talk about some parts of the story that were falsely portrayed by articles and the media. This part is really important because there is so much misleading information out there and some are not even true. Story number 1 as portrayed by the different media outlets. On 4th November 2009, Kuang Zhijun's mother had a weird dream. She dreamt that a tall man in black clothing, wearing a hat and carrying a bag, had entered the family house through the back door. He was smiling at Kuang Zhijun's mother, but she was unable to see his face clearly. Kuang Zhijun's mother immediately woke up from the dream and urged her husband to return back to the old farmhouse to go and check. The next day, on November 5, 2009, both parents rushed home where they found their son's body. Now this story has been circulated everywhere. It's true that the mother did have that dream, but it wasn't because of the dream that the father went back to the old farmhouse. The truth is, Kuang Zhijun's father had only wanted to pass his son some allowance money when he discovered the gruesome sight of his son's body. Story number 2 as portrayed by the different media outlets. Kuang Zhijun was found with both his hands and feet tied firmly, wearing a red dress over a black swimsuit. Other than the deep strangulation marks caused by the rope, there were no other visible signs of trauma. Between his feet dangled a weight and he had a tiny pinhole on the forehead. Everything is true except for the tiny pinhole on the forehead. A post-mortem was released in 2010 and they found nothing of such. So I'm wondering who exactly spread this pinhole on the head nonsense, because it's literally reported everywhere until people believe it to be true. But pinhole on the forehead is false. Since we are talking about post-mortem, let's go into a bit more detail. According to the post-mortem report, his blood work showed no traces of poisoning, sleeping pills, pesticides, and his organs were not damaged. In other words, the boy was not drugged. There were no other injuries except for the deep strangulation marks caused by the rope, so this goes to show that the boy wasn't being knocked unconscious too. The medical examiner also said that there were no signs or evidence of a struggle, so it was highly unlikely that Kuang Zhijun was being forced to be in this position. All these actions were voluntarily done by Kuang Zhijun himself, otherwise he was very cooperative if there was another person involved. And if you remember what I've mentioned earlier, it's impossible for you to force a swimsuit on someone because of how skin-tight fitting it is. So all the more it made sense that it's voluntarily done. It was then determined that Kuang Zhijun died of orthostatic asphyxiation. Kuang Zhijun had been in an abnormal position and was also being tied up for a long time, so there was restrictions in the blood flow, oxygen flow, and this resulted in his death. Now let's go on to talk about some theories and speculations by netizens. Theory number 1. Some netizens believe that the boy had some sexual fantasy thing going on and he wanted to try it out. The candle wax drippings on his swimsuit as well as the chain on the bed were very suspicious, and because the beam in which he was found hanging from had several rope friction marks, which goes to show that this wasn't his first time playing with ropes. Could he have been trying out bondage on himself? Now, as mentioned earlier, the boy was professionally and skillfully tied, and because he does have a lot of free time to himself, he had lots of opportunities to practice. So it's not surprising that he was able to tie himself in a professional and skillful manner. His parents were far away, and most of the time he was by himself, quiet, alone, introverted. Nobody knew what he was up to. On the surface, he was a normal kid. What about when he's alone at home? Is it possible for a 13-year-old to know about these things? It's not entirely impossible. The case happened in 2009 and technology was already advancing. There's VCDs, computers, cell phones, and at that time you could already surf the net using your cell phone, so it's not surprising that he will have access to this kind of things. Now, the apartment also had some Saint Seiya's VCDs, and as mentioned before, the way he was dressed when he was was found was quite similar to a character in the series, and there's a lot of ropes and chains involved, so when the boy was exposed to this, many speculated that he was experimenting around. He was trying to get himself sexually aroused while dressed in similar outfit like the Saint Seiya. And at that point of time, he might have been too immersed in the activity that he was unable to untie himself, and the more he struggled, the tighter the rope got. But nobody knows what exactly happened. This is just one of the theories that many netizens believed in. Although I do feel this theory is quite disrespectful to the family and to the deceased especially, I thought that I shouldn't omit this part out because it goes to show that leaving your kid alone is not the best thing to do. Although I know it depends on situation, like for this case, the parents probably had no choice, they needed to make money, but I feel that this scenario is possible and kids shouldn't be left alone for too long. Theory number 2. Theory number 2 is a little bit more complicated because it talks about some ritual, so let's get into it. Internet detectives speculated that Kuang Zhijun's death was part of some rare once-in-a-century rite relating to Mao Shan, a mysterious Taoist sect. The red dress, the expert knots, the weight, the tiny mark on the forehead, the wooden beam, even the boy's birthday and time of death, he died aged 13 years and 13 days, all supposedly adhered to certain practices associated with the Taoist sorcery. Some believe that a sect had killed the boy in order to raise him as a ghost. Netizens speculated that in this strange killing ritual, the 5 elements theory was used. The weight between his feet represents metal, the swimsuit represents water, the wooden beam that he was found hanging from represents wood, the red dress represents fire, and the dirt ground floor represents earth. The pinhole would separate the soul from the body, and the weight would keep the body on earth. And the red dress was to bind the soul to the killer. It was also said that performing this ritual would enable you to extend your life, but in order to extend whoever's life, you have to perform this ritual to another 12 more people. So in total, you need to perform this ritual on 13 people. The auspicious number yet again. I'm not very clear on this. Whatever the ritual was for, to obtain some soul or to extend someone's life, it's somewhere along that line. So it's said that 13 people with the same fate will all be killed, and netizens began doing their investigation work. It happened that between 2009 and the beginning of 2010, there were many bizarre deaths of teenagers in China. For example, on February 4th, 2010, 4 people were drowned in Putian, Fujian province. On February 18, 2010, 5 people drowned in Zhejiang, Tiantai, and on 2nd March 2010, a girl was hanged in a telephone booth in Putian, Fujian. On the same day, 2 people were drowned in Zhejiang, Tiantai, so that's a total of 12 people. Together with the boy in red, that's 13 people. Regarding this theory, there were some details that didn't add up to me. Firstly, his date of birth had conflicting reports. He died when he was 13 is correct, but the 13 days remain questionable because nobody was able to confirm his correct date of birth. Secondly, as mentioned earlier in the post-mortem report, there was no pinhole on the forehead, and since this ritual needed the pinhole to separate the soul from the body, I am assuming something went wrong during the ritual. Or was this report a cover-up by the Mao Shan sect since they could be powerful enough to influence the police? Otherwise, this theory is just to make this case seem more spooky than it already is. Although netizens were able to find 12 other deaths of these people, with the exception of the girl that was hanged in the telephone booth, the rest were by drowning, and it seems far less complicated than Kuang Zhijun's case. But this ritual theory is widely supported by netizens in China. Theory number 3. Kuang Zhijun's mother had married twice. It was speculated that the mother's ex-husband and elder son had conspired to kill the boy as revenge because they had a dispute. However, police insisted that the pair had an alibi. And that's all we have for the theories, and we have also come to an end for today's case. I cannot imagine how devastated the parents must be. It's truly a weird, tragic, and spooky manner in how the boy died. I would think even up to this day, even though police have closed this case officially, I don't think the parents were able to move on. It's obvious that they were unable to accept the reasoning by the police. There's a lot of people who chance upon this story and they had doubts whether it's true or not, but this story, this case, is indeed true. There's also a movie made that was inspired by this case story, but I think they turned it into a horror ghost story. If you like the way I tell stories, please do give me a like, subscribe to my channel, and share this video around. I upload videos every Thursday, and I'll see you next Thursday with another video.